Welcome to the latest guidance update from the National Youth Agency from 6th of September 2021. My name is Lee Middleton. I'm the Chief Executive of the National Youth Agency, and it's my pleasure to take you through some of relatively minor changes to guidance from this new version. So I'm going to jump through a set of slides and take everyone through the changes. First thing to note is that the guidance from the NYA is purely for England, and we only have jurisdiction across England. So if you're operating in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, as always, please contact the authorities in those areas, and they will advise you if there are different requirements. Pretty much everything seems to be fairly aligned these days, but there are still some changes that come and go. Secondly, if you're a member of a national association, there are a few of them on the screen, there are many, many others, then you should also take note of any advice and guidance that your national association provides you, as they may have slightly different requirements and things that they want you to do, or additional measures that they'd like you to consider as part of your activities and your planning. So do follow the work of your national associations. They've been absolutely amazing through this pandemic working with us, so please keep tight contact with them. So I'm really pleased to say we're now moving to version 8 of the NYA Guidance, and you'll find the new version of the document on our website as usual. You can go to nya.org.uk. The pop-up will jump in front of you and say there's guidance, and you can click on that and it will take you straight to it. Our guidance is developed in consultation with Public Health England and Health Safety Executive, working in partnership with the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport as well. So this is version 8, and as you can see from the front cover, we've gone green, and this is good news. It means we're, as part of the NYA's programme in terms of supporting the youth sector, the readiness level is now readiness level green. So this has some good news. This means more things are available, and it's not quite back to normal, but it's getting there. It'll certainly start to feel far more normal. What I want to say to everybody though is that COVID-19 has not gone away. We are still at risk of new variants. There are still numbers, as we record this video, are rising again in England, and so we urge caution. And there are still measures within our guidance that must be followed. Hygiene, general practice that must be put into place and followed. However, activities and things should take place, can open up. Every project should open around the country. And the NYA is here to support you, and as those national associations, as are many other organisations who brilliantly help the youth sector, not just through this pandemic, but in normal times as well. So we're now green, which is great news, and we hope we don't go backwards. However, the point of the readiness level system was that if restrictions are reimposed or additional measures are needed because the numbers rise and the hospitalisation figures get too concerning, if the government makes the decision to impose new restrictions, the NYA will be with you all the way through that, and we may find ourselves moving back to amber or what have you. We hope that doesn't happen, and we're working on an assumption that that won't happen, but if it does, we'll be ready to go. So just to pick up on the government's roadmap, obviously this roadmap is now complete. So our new guidance document doesn't really talk about the roadmap because the Prime Minister's roadmap finished on the 19th of July when we allowed trips and visits and residentials and group sizes were lifted, etc. So this is the last time we will talk about the roadmap in this context. This roadmap is now concluded. We are now just in normal guidance structures, and that means that we're in our NYA's readiness levels and we're at readiness level green. So from the 6th of September, this guidance video is for you from the 6th of September moving forward. And again, if things change, we'll put a new webinar or video out if things need to change. So everything I'm talking you through today is from Monday the 6th of September. And we're going to run through in our usual format everything that's allowed from start to finish, so that we'd capture everything. But online and virtual youth sector delivery is always been allowed the whole way through the entire pandemic, and can continue obviously. Detached and outreach work outdoors, delivery of outdoor provision for young people, absolutely fine and can continue as normal. We can continue to work one-to-one with young people indoors and supporting young people. We can continue with our trips and visits. And they're permitted locally, but local is. But what can you do within a day? So that that is allowed. Residential educational experiences are also continue to be allowed. And that is great news. And our open access provision is fine. But the big change from this one is that the reason we moved to green is our international education trips and visits are also now permitted. Now we'll cover that a little bit later on. But we can now go abroad, we can now travel overseas, but we must be following the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office's guidance. So people are often familiar in the media with the amber list, the red list, the green list of countries that you can visit. And trips are permitted, but you must follow the Foreign Office's advice. The thing we're very, very keen on and really must be stuck to the whole way through the pandemic, because this pandemic is not over, is that we must remain COVID responsible. And this means we must be, where we can, ensuring that we've got our action plan. Everyone must have their action plans in place. You've had these plans for the last 18 months. You need to keep them up to date. You need to keep them reviewed. Things change, venues change, young people's behaviours change. The types of activities you want to do are different and come and go. And as all of that shifts, you need to be looking at your action plans and your risk assessments and reviewing and renewing those risk assessments. Your action plan is very clearly about who's responsible for what bits and pieces, how are you going to do things, how are you structuring things, how are you making sure you've got suitable hygiene, how are you making sure that group control is in place. And your risk assessment is there just to understand all the potential, harms and hazards that exist in what you're trying to do. And we don't want these risk assessments to be overly burdensome, but we did experience through most of the pandemic the quality of risk assessments is pretty low. So please do focus on how you're writing your risk assessments. Consider the risks, consider the mitigations, and how you can minimise those risks. And if there are activities or projects or things you could do, and there might be alternatives to those that achieve the same outcome but with lower risk, then we would obviously encourage you to undertake that. That said, we encourage young people to learn and develop, and learning risk is a major part of that. That's why we go climbing. That's why we go, we do all sorts of fun activities, canoeing, all sorts. And so we don't want to stop any of that. That all take place, but particularly in terms of the pandemic, if there's types of activities you're wanting to do that involves very close quarters where everyone's sort of huddled together, then do consider whether there are alternatives to that. That would just be really good practice. As well as being COVID responsible, as part of being COVID responsible, our hygiene needs to be absolutely rock solid, and this should probably be in place for going forward. But particularly there's a pandemic, particularly as young people go back to school, as we may see seasonal flu come back, we may see colds and what have you. To minimise the impact on young people's education, to minimise the impact on communities and their families and your families as workers. Do keep hygiene high. Washing hands for your 20 seconds with soap and water is the best thing to do. Hand hygiene and sanitizer, wipes and things all do their job and do use them. That's absolutely fine. But keep that hand hygiene super high. One of the other areas, and I know we've had a lot of people say, it's really boring, I've got to keep cleaning the venue and wiping down door handles, but you do need to have somebody who's wandering around, periodically wiping down those surfaces, sanitising, worktops, kitchen worktops, keyboards, mouses on computers and things, if you've got them, equipment, footballs, just general activity equipment, pool cues, that's what a lot of youth clubs do. All that stuff needs to be routinely kind of wiped down and cleansed. It all helps to minimise the risk of spreading the COVID-19 virus. And there's more of it out there now than there was when we went to the last step of the roadmap. So as there's more out there, we need to be more diligent. And finally, sort of face coverings and social distancing are not legally required any longer, but are highly recommended, particularly in poorly ventilated spaces or spaces where there is close proximity to others, so where you can't be, a reasonable distance apart. So if you've got a stuffy venue and you can't open the windows, then we recommend wearing face coverings. If you've got a stuffy venue, open the windows. If it's freezing cold, because this video could still be being watched and used, in the depths of winter across England, well then, if you don't want to open the windows because it's going to be too cold, then face coverings should be worn, could be worn as a mitigation. Face coverings need to be worn by everybody who can wear them. They are very effective at protecting you from transmitting the infection or picking up the infection, but it only works if everybody does it. And then social distancing, again, legally not a requirement, but is advised in terms of those poorly ventilated spaces, because if you're further back, when you breathe out, your breathing particles are further. It's harder for somebody else to breathe those back in. So 6 factors to be COVID responsible, and we ask the entire youth sector to continue with these things for the foreseeable future. We will withdraw COVID responsible at the point that we don't need it. And NYA is here to support the youth sector through COVID-19 until the pandemic concludes, and we're certainly expecting that to run to next April at the earliest before we would stop. So please be conscious of these things. So just to recap on from Monday the 6th of September, youth provision for all ages. There's no difference in over and under 18s as there has been in the past. All ages. Indoor and outdoor open access provision for young people is absolutely fine. There are no limitations on group sizes, and but do follow those COVID responsible measures because they are highly recommended to keep people safe and keep your activities, your provision responsible. Day trips and visits are still permitted. Travel by minibus, taxi, public transport and car is absolutely fine. Now again, minibuses and taxis and things, you could be in quite close proximity, sat side to side to somebody. That's your time to be wearing face coverings. That's the time to be double down on your hand sanitizer and making sure we're being responsible. They're the worst opportunities to pick up the virus or any other pathogen. So if we're in those enclosed spaces, do think those things through. But it's absolutely fine to use every seat on the bus to fill it up and to go away and do activities by day, by night. The whole lot is absolutely good. Again, bored of me saying this, but follow those COVID responsible measures. If you're going to a third-party venue, they may still have certain things they require you to do. So separating certain groups, spreading out. This may get more prevalent as if the numbers, as winter kicks in, if the number of the volume of the virus rises. You may find providers of activities and services make their own decisions about how they want to structure things, and that might be to protect their own staff, other vulnerable groups, or just their customers. So if you go to a third-party venue, you may find they've got requirements they want you to follow, and please, you need to do so. Face coverings recommended on transport, and I've already covered that. Now, the other big thing, obviously, with moving to green, is that domestic and international educational residential experiences are now permitted, which is really exciting. And essentially, this does mean the NYA is allowing pretty much all activity to take place, as long as it's risk assessed within your action plans, well considered, and you're being COVID responsible at the same time. If you can do those things, then you can go and pretty much do everything you wish. So, yep, we've updated our little graphics. We can travel domestically. We can get on a plane now. Hurrah! We can travel around. I know there's been a lot of trips and visits, and we've helped an awful lot of uniform groups and youth projects who have had to try and get their money back from, airlines or travel agents and things, or they've had to delay their trips. From as far as the NYA youth sector guidance is concerned, it is perfectly reasonable to now go travelling. You can camp, you can stay in hotels, lodges, dormitories, etc., etc. That is all fine. One of the other changes that we're bringing in in this guidance is throughout the summer we kept the rule of 6 for accommodation, so no more than 6 per tent, 6 per bedroom, 6 per dormitory. That rule of 6 has been removed from Monday the 6th of September. So from now, you're welcome to go away and you can use it, put as many people in a room as it can hold sensibly and safely within your safeguarding rules and considerations, but you can go and do that. International travel is absolutely fine, but you do need to follow the advice from the FCDO, so the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office. It's a bit of a mouthful now. I'll call them the Foreign Office, but the Foreign Office give us advice and guidance on which countries we can go to, things to consider when we're visiting other countries, and they also publish the lists in terms of your red countries which you could go to, but you'd have to quarantine for 2 weeks on return. Anyway, do not recommend the travelling to red list countries. Our actual guidance document doesn't state that, but it'd be very hard for you to manage putting all these young people into public hotels for 2 weeks to quarantine. I think the risk assessment on that would rule that out. But amber list countries and for green list countries, travel is absolutely fine, although you need to consider the testing requirements. But all that information is provided by the Foreign Office, and so go to the Foreign Office website, check out where you want to go, check whether they are red or green, red, amber or green, and the advice is there on what you need to do next. The NYA is not a travel agent. We are not experts in international travel. Do not provide advice on whether you should or shouldn't do those things. You need to talk to the Foreign Office about that. We're just saying, if you follow their rules, you're welcome to go. But there are no limitation on group sizes. Your total headcount continues to include your leaders and carers, so it can be as large a group as you like and as many leaders and volunteers as you wish. Groups from different projects can mix, and that includes during dining, free time, and during activities. So I know a lot of providers, particularly in the faith sector, but not exclusively, like to bring groups of young people from different parts of the country to a central location for a weekend or a camp or a type of activity. That's absolutely fine. You can bring those groups together. They can mix freely. You can mix them up in bedrooms. You can do all those things. No problem at all. Groups may travel together. So we've also had examples where we all get on a train and it takes us to Birmingham City, Birmingham Station, and then we all get on a bus and then we go to the venue. That's all fine. You can all travel on those in separate trains to get to a central point, all jump on the same bus and mix, and then get off to go to where you want to go. All of that is absolutely fine. However, do consider your travel, those COVID secure and responsible measures. So face coverings, hygiene. Boring me talking about it, but it's really key. The need for testing hasn't gone away. Our secondary schools are still testing pupils twice a week, and so this is still here for the youth sector. So if you're going on a residential, then you'll still need to be undertaking lateral flow tests before departure, every 2 to 3 days while you're away. And it's good practice to probably do it when you return as well after a couple of days, just to make sure that there's no picking it up and taking it further. Very similar to the schools. This includes your leaders and your staff, but the need for lateral flow testing has not changed, and must be continued. And again, if you're renting or going to a third party's venue, particularly if it's overseas, if you're going to a different country, those countries will have or may have different rules and requirements, and you must know what they are, and you need to be following them. So some countries still have group size limitations. Some countries may still have types of activities you can't go and do, certain behaviours that they would expect you to follow. So so if you're planning that international dimension, do look up where you're planning to go and ask your travel agent what are the restrictions, what are the requirements in that area, because you need to know, because you're going to have to follow the law in those countries. And we want to be good. We want to be good tourists. We want to be good, really responsible when we go. So groups must follow the venues that you're visiting in the UK and abroad, as I said previously. Now, I just wanted to pick up a few things. So if a young person shows signs of illness, then they should obviously be tested and transported home. Now, I said here by private car. If they're overseas and they are tested positive, you're going to need to talk to the local health officials and follow the local guidance there. There's nothing the NYA can kind of advise centrally. Transporting one young person home overseas may not be practical and reasonable, so you might need to be able to isolate them wherever you've gone, and and follow the health officials' guidance in that country. So there's quite a lot of things to consider when going abroad. But it's all that information is on the Foreign Office website. So please go and look at that. If a member of staff shows sign of illness, then the whole group might need to return home. And again, if overseas, that might be slightly more different or difficult. But do consider, if you've gone away and you've only got 2 or 3 staff, one of them's come ill, leaving you with too few staff, then the whole group might need to return home. Let's hope not, but we have known examples of where that's taken place. So anybody who does show signs of illness that's related to COVID-19, and these are coughs, loss of taste, and all those sorts of things. There's a very long list of those now. Do immediately isolate and seek a test, and that should be a PCR test ideally. But if you've got lateral flow tests, do one of those initially, but then seek a PCR test as well. Any group member where someone shows signs of illness needs to seek that COVID-19 test and isolate if positive. And standard stuff. This hasn't changed. So lateral flow testing. All attendees for educational, overnight, residentials and international trips, should be tested every 2 to 3 days, and specifically on departure as well. So you don't take anybody away who's has already got COVID-19, and sadly they can't come with you. Test the whole group. You can access lateral flow tests through NHS Test and Trace. I recognise this is starting to get more difficult, but I think that's due to supply chain challenges, and you just need to work with your local contact centre, so your local lateral flow or testing centre, or NHS Test and Trace to get access to those testing kits. We may find, and I've no evidence to this, but that as time goes on, it might be that we have to purchase these testing kits from a commercial basis rather than being provided them free by the state. One viewpoint is that we're going to have to live with most of COVID-19. It may never go away, and so if we need to be in the future, if we need to continue lateral flow testing, you may have to go and purchase them. For now, I do believe they're still free, but that might change. So depending on when you're watching this video was recorded for the 6th of September 2021. If you're watching it 3 months later and the rules have changed, then please take a note of what you might need to do in terms of getting access to lateral flow testing kits. Anyone testing positive needs to seek a PCR test and return home or isolate. Now, one of the things that we've added to the guidance this time around is Public Health has changed their approach to testing. So one of the challenges, if you've had COVID-19 within the last 90 days, there is a reasonable risk that your lateral flow test may come back positive, even though you no longer are positive for the virus. And this is because when you have the virus, it lives in your body. Your body fights it off, and as it does so, those virus cells die. But the tests are there to detect the cells, whether they're dead or alive. So you can do the test, but the test might come back positive, although actually what the test is picking up is on the dead COVID-19 cells within your system. And it can take you 3 months to work those through and get them out of your body. So the latest advice from Public Health Test and Trace is if you've had a positive diagnosis of COVID-19 within the last 90 days, there is no longer a need to undertake a lateral flow test before you go on that residential or while you're away, because the risk of it coming back positive is high. Now, things to be thinking through. If you're away and you haven't been able to test somebody because they had COVID 2 months ago, but they were okay when you departed, but they've come down with symptoms and they're starting to look unwell, well, then you need to follow the same measures to protect the rest of the group. So isolate that individual, and at that point, contact NHS Test and Trace and seek a PCR test, which the Public Health will undertake that test for you and will advise you whether they are positive or not. So it's slightly changed in terms of that 90-day component. There's a lot of people coming back positive actually when they were negative, from being at risk of transmitting the virus, because the virus is dead but it's in their system still. It takes 90 days to get out. So again, if you've got somebody who, but you're away and they come down ill with, coldy flu types, cough sort of symptoms, isolate them and treat them as if that you think they may have COVID-19, just as you would somebody who's not had COVID. Put them to one side, isolate them, seek advice from NHS Test and Trace, and they will get you tested separately, and then follow their advice. One slight tweak. Now, we still want the youth sector to be really careful around insurance. Just because you can travel overseas doesn't mean your insurance provider will permit you to or will insure you to do so. You may need to find and seek additional insurances and additional measures. Some countries' health systems may not provide support if you pick up COVID-19 whilst overseas. It's a bit of a minefield in truth. So contact your travel agent. Contact your insurance provider. Be really clear before you go that you have got the best cover you need that covers the things in all eventualities. Just be really responsible. Check this stuff out. Get it in writing. Get it written down. Get them to email you the advice and be really clear that you've got all the right levels of protection and cover that you feel you need before you go. So just to recap some of our COVID responsible measures, the use of face coverings should continue, particularly in poorly ventilated spaces. This is sort of indoor spaces, transport, or if you're doing close contact activities. That doesn't include sports. If you're running around a sports hall or you're singing on stage, then no need to do this. But if you're working in those poorly ventilated close spaces, use of face coverings is still recommended. Not legally required, but highly recommended by the NYA. Hygiene measures must continue. You must make sure all those venues are clean, people using that hand sanitizer. You can still provide back-to-back sessions, but we recommend you clean your venue in between so that, if there was a problem in group 1, that doesn't get picked up by group 2 an hour later. So, you can use the same members of staff and they can work across multiple days of the week. None of that is a problem. All this is the standard. None of this has changed from last time, folks. But do think through hygiene. You can use community and public venues. Everywhere can now be opened. There's no venue that shouldn't be allowing you in and opening for provision. Everywhere can be operating. The use of private dwellings remains prohibited. Now, this isn't because of COVID-19 regulations. This is because of NYA safeguarding requirements. So we will not recommend or allow the use of private dwellings. This is an area that we have been challenged on by a number of organisations and parts of the sector, and we are reviewing our stance on this, and we are talking to other experts across other bodies as we do so. But as it stands today, the use of private dwellings remains prohibited. But home visits to visit young people are absolutely fine. So if you're a worker that goes and visits a young person with maybe extreme anxiety, who doesn't have the capacity to visit a youth project but in a public space, so you need to go to them. As long as you've got the right risk assessments, as long as you've followed all your right safeguarding measures, there's sufficient adults in the venue, in the space, in the home, then you can go and visit young people. That's not a problem, and we've allowed this for quite some time. You can find all the information from the NYA on our COVID-19 guidance on our website, and you can find access to this video, you can find access to the download of the new documentation, and you can go to our website at any point, and the front page of our website will tell you whether what the COVID level is. So it'll as of the 6th of September, it changed to green, and that's great news for the sector. You can also get in touch with us if you have a specific situation and you're not quite clear on, and you can email us, which is guidance@nya.org.uk. You just drop us an email at guidance@nya.org.uk, and our team will get back to you. We get quite a lot of emails through that process, so it does take us a day or two sometimes to get back to you. We've been trying to be swift as we can, but we are here to help and support. So if you have any specific questions or areas of concern that you're not 100% sure on, get in touch with us. We'll do our best. We may refer you to others. So if you come to us about international travel, we are not experts in this, but we may be able to point you in the right direction. That's it from us. So as far as from the NYA, thank you so much for everybody following the advice and guidance over the last 18 months. We're not out of the woods yet. We have moved ourselves to green, which means pretty much all youth provision is acceptable and allowed within those measures. Thank you so much. But as we enter winter, we need to be very, very careful and diligent. And so, keep an eye on this guidance, keep an eye on what we're doing. And we'll be providing and publishing additional information. We are providing work. We've got some work kits coming around how to reopen safely and support for youth work organisations. There's free training on our website. So if any of that is of use to you, get in touch with us or go to our website and take a look, and have a great day. Thank you very much.